You did not stumble onto this message by accident. You did not find this by scrolling mindlessly or by some random turn of the algorithm. Something older than the internet, something older than every system human hands have ever built, pulled you here. You need to understand that before another word is spoken, heaven has pressed pause on everything around you to deliver this message directly into your ears, directly into your chest, directly into the part of you that has been waiting for someone to finally say what you have been feeling but could not put into words. You are not here by coincidence. You are here because you were chosen, and the chosen ones always arrive exactly on time. There is a specific kind of person who finds their way to a message like this. You are not everyone. You have never been everyone. From the time you were young, you felt it, that quiet, persistent sense that you were different, that you were carrying something the people around you were not carrying, that your life was building toward something larger than what you could see. Most people laughed it off. Most people told you to be realistic. Most people tried to reshape you into something smaller, something more manageable, something that would not make them uncomfortable with its size. But you could never fully let it go, because it was never just a feeling. It was a knowing. And that knowing is exactly what brought you here today. Before this message goes any further, there are signs you need to recognize. These are not random symptoms. These are divine markers. And if you are truly among the chosen, you will know them not because someone told you, but because you have been living them. The first sign is that your dreams have been growing sharper, not longer, not necessarily more dramatic, but clearer, more deliberate, as if something is trying to communicate with you through the language of sleep. You wake up and you feel like the dream meant something, even when you cannot explain what. That sharpness is not your imagination running loose. That is heaven opening a channel. The second sign is an irritability that you cannot fully explain. Things that used to roll off you now press against something raw inside you. Noise feels louder. Smallness in the people around you feels more suffocating. You have moments of frustration that rise up out of nowhere, and when you trace them back, you realize they are connected to a deep, unshakable sense that you were built for more than what you are currently living. That irritability is not a flaw in your character. It is a friction between your destiny and your current coordinates. The third sign is that you feel most alone in the most crowded rooms. You can be surrounded by people who love you, people who know your name, people who would do anything for you, and still feel a specific kind of solitude that none of them can reach. It is not depression, though it can wear that mask. It is the solitude of the chosen, the quiet that exists in the space between who you are right now and who you were created to become. The fourth sign is that you have survived things that should have broken you completely. There are moments in your past that you do not speak about freely. Seasons of your life that felt like they were designed to destroy you, and yet here you are, not just surviving, but listening, still reaching, still believing in something you cannot fully name. That survival was not luck. It was protection. Something has been guarding you for a purpose, and that purpose is what this message has come to. Awaken. The fifth sign is this: you feel right now, in this very moment, that these words are not general. You feel like they are spoken directly to you. That feeling is correct. It is not flattery. It is not a technique. It is recognition. The message recognizes you because you belong to it, and it belongs to you. Now type the number 444 in the comments right now. Not as a superstition, not as a ritual for its own sake, but as a declaration. As a way of saying, I am here, I am aware, I am choosing to receive what has been prepared for me. 4 is the number of foundation, of divine order made visible in the earth, and 3 of them together is a statement that you are standing on solid ground, that you are ready to receive what has been built for you from before the beginning. Type 444 and let this moment become your point of return. Because this is not a message for everyone. This is a message for the remnant. The remnant is not the majority. The remnant is not the loudest crowd or the most comfortable group. The remnant is the ones who could not be fully absorbed into the ordinary. The ones who kept feeling the pull, even when they tried to ignore it. The ones who sat in silence and heard something speaking back. If that is you, then this message belongs to you, and it is asking you to stop moving, to stop scrolling. Stop managing your life from the surface and to go deep. You are an earth angel. You carry a light that the darkness has been trying to extinguish for years. Every attack that came against you, every relationship that ended unexpectedly, every door that closed in your face, every season of waiting that felt endless, none of it was random destruction. All of it was strategic opposition. Because something on the other side of this moment knows what you are capable of, and it has spent years trying to make sure you never fully arrive. But you are here, and that means the opposition failed. You are not like the rest. You were never meant to blend in. You were never designed to simply exist inside a system and follow its rules without question. You were designed to carry a frequency, to hold a vibration, to be a walking disruption to every plan that was formed against the people around you. Your presence alone shifts atmospheres. You have walked into rooms and felt things change, felt heaviness lift, felt tension dissolve, and you thought it was coincidence. It was not coincidence. It was your assignment expressing itself without your permission, because that is how deeply it is woven into who you are. And here is what this message needs you to understand from the very beginning. The correction that is coming, the adjustment that you have been resisting, the change that you have been praying for, while secretly fearing what it would require of you. It is not punishment. It is not abandonment. It is not proof that you have been forgotten or overlooked or left behind. It is the hand of something immeasurably large and immeasurably precise, reaching into the details of your life and rearranging what needs to be rearranged so that the thing you were born to carry can finally be carried at full weight. You cannot pray for change and resist the correction that change requires. Those two things cannot coexist. You have been on your knees asking for a new chapter, and heaven has been waiting for you to stop clinging to the last page. This message is the turning point. This moment is the threshold, and everything that comes next is designed to walk you across it, one section at a time, with nothing held back and nothing softened beyond what is necessary. Stay here. Do not close this. Do not let the noise of everything else pull you away from the next few minutes. Because what is coming for you in this message is exactly what you have been asking for. It arrived in a form you did not expect. That is how the chosen ones receive their breakthroughs. Not in the expected package, not through the familiar door, but through the one they almost walked past. You almost walked past this one, but you did not. And that is the first proof that something greater than your own instincts is guiding your steps. You are chosen, you are marked. You are not here by accident, and this message has been waiting for you. And this is not the first time heaven has spoken into a moment like yours. Throughout all of history, the chosen ones have arrived at crossroads exactly like this one, carrying weight exactly like yours, feeling the pull of something larger than themselves, while the world around them offered every reasonable argument for staying small and staying safe. And in every single case, the ones who responded to the pull, The ones who leaned into the recognition rather than away from it. The ones who said yes to the message even before they fully understood what the yes would require. Those were the ones whose lives became the stories that still speak thousands of years later. Your life is being written right now. Not in the past, not in the future, but in this moment. In the decision you are making with every breath you take while these words are moving through you. And the story that is being written is not a small one. It was never meant to be a small one. The size of the opposition that has come against you is evidence of the size of what is being written. Small stories do not attract large opposition. Ordinary lives do not require extraordinary resistance. The fact that you have been pressed the way you have been pressed, tested the way you have been tested, brought to the edge of your endurance more times than you can comfortably count, is not random. It is proportional. The weight of the preparation matches the weight of the assignment. And the assignment that carries your name is larger than anything the corridor has allowed you to see. So stay with this message. Let it do what it came to do. Let it reach past the surface of where you are and go into the places that have been waiting for exactly this word. Because what is coming in the next section is going to take the recognition you felt in these first words and go deeper with it, into the story of someone whose life looks remarkably like yours and whose decision changed everything. You have made it past the first threshold. That matters more than you know. Most people hear a message like this and feel the pull, feel the recognition, feel that quiet shock of being seen, and then the noise of ordinary life rushes back in and swallows the moment whole. But you are still here. You chose to stay. And that choice is already telling you something about who you are and what you are made of. Because the chosen ones do not run from the weight. They learn, slowly and often painfully, to carry it. There is a woman in Scripture whose story has been told many times, but rarely in the way it deserves to be told. Her name is Esther. And before she was a queen, before she stood in the throne room and changed the fate of an entire people, before her name became synonymous with courage and divine positioning, she was an orphan. She was a girl who had lost everything that should have made her feel safe in this world. Her parents were gone. She was raised by a cousin in a foreign land, living under a name that was not fully her own, navigating a world that had not been built for her. She had every reason to shrink. She had every reason to decide that survival was enough, that blending in was wisdom, that the safest version of her life was also the smallest one. But something in Esther refused to be made small. Not because she was fearless, she was not fearless, but because the thing that had been placed inside her was larger than her fear. And that is the distinction that matters. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the decision that what you were built to carry is more important than the comfort of putting it down. Esther did not know she was being positioned. She did not wake up each morning with a clear vision of the throne room, with a map of how her story would unfold, with certainty that her suffering had a destination. She simply lived faithfully inside the life that was in front of her, and heaven moved around her the way water moves around a stone it intends to carry downstream. She was not passive. She was not merely lucky. She was chosen, and she was being prepared in a season that looked nothing like preparation. This is the part of her story that most people rush past. They want to get to the moment where she speaks to the king. They want the triumph, the reversal, the moment where everything changes. But the preparation is the story. The orphan years are the story. The years of living in a land that was not fully home, of carrying a heritage she had to conceal, of being shaped by loss and uncertainty, and the particular kind of loneliness that comes from being set apart, without yet understanding why. Those years were not the delay before her destiny. Those years were her destiny being constructed, layer by layer, in the hidden place. You know those years. You have lived your own version of them. The seasons where nothing seemed to be moving, where your prayers felt like they were hitting the ceiling and falling back into your lap, where the people around you seemed to be advancing while you stood still and wondered what you were missing. Those seasons were not punishment. They were not proof that you had been forgotten, or that your faith was insufficient, or that the promise was never real. Those seasons were Esther's orphan years. They were the hidden curriculum of the chosen, the formation that happens below the surface, in the dark, in the silence, in the exact place where most people give up. And here is what Esther understood, not all at once, but over time, through the guidance of the one who had raised her, and the quiet work of something moving in her life that she could not always see. She understood that she had not arrived where she was by accident, that the very things that had tried to define her as small, as displaced, as less than, were the exact things being woven into a garment of authority that no one else could wear. Her losses had not diminished her. They had deepened her, and depth in the kingdom of heaven is the currency of power. This is what the weight you carry is doing in you right now. Every sleepless night, every silent tear, every moment of feeling misunderstood by people who were supposed to know you, every door that closed when you needed it to open, none of it was wasted. All of it is being woven. All of it is being used. The loom is not visible to you from where you are standing, but the fabric is being made. And it is more magnificent than anything you have been able to imagine for yourself in your most hopeful moments. The weight you carry is not weakness. This is the sentence that heaven needs you to receive today, fully, without the part of you that immediately argues back. The weight is not weakness. The weight is evidence. It is evidence that you were trusted with something that lighter people could not hold. It is evidence that the thing assigned to your life required someone with a particular kind of depth, a particular kind of endurance, a particular kind of rootedness that can only be developed through pressure. You are not burdened because you are broken. You are burdened because you are the one who can carry it. Esther could have spent her life grieving what she had lost. The parents she never got to grow old with, the sense of belonging that was taken before she was old enough to understand what belonging meant. And no one would have blamed her for that grief. It was real, it was legitimate. But grief, when it becomes the permanent residence of a chosen soul, becomes a cage. And Esther, whether she fully understood it or not, refused to make her grief her address. She moved through it. She carried it honestly, and she kept moving. You are being asked to do the same thing right now, not to pretend the pain was not real, not to perform a joy you do not yet feel, but to make the decision that the pain is not the final word, that the weight is not the end of the sentence, that what you have carried is not a verdict on your value, but a preparation for your assignment. Because Esther stood in that throne room carrying every single one of those orphan years. Every moment of loss, every season of concealment, every year of formation in the hidden place. All of it was present in her posture when she stood before the king. She did not stand there despite her story. She stood there because of it. And the words that came out of her mouth in that moment, the words that turned the tide for an entire generation, were words that could only have been spoken by someone who had been prepared the way she had been prepared. And now hear this clearly. What comes out of you in your defining moment will also carry everything you have been through. The people you are assigned to reach, the lives you are called to change, the rooms you are called to walk into and shift. They need what has been formed in you through the fire, not the version of you that was untouched and unbroken, the version of you that went through it and came out still standing, still reaching, still believing. The book of Esther, chapter 4 and verse 14 says it this way: "Who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" Esther chapter 4 verse 14. That verse was written for her, but it was also written for you, for this exact season, for this exact moment. For the weight you have been carrying that you thought was going to crush you, but was actually crowning you. You have come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Not when you are more prepared, not when the circumstances are more favorable, not when the fear is gone. Now, exactly as you are, exactly where you are, with everything you have been through still fresh on your skin. The weight is not winning. The weight is working, and you are not as far from your moment as the difficulty of this season has made you feel. Stay with this. Let it land. Because what comes next is going to take you deeper still, into the place where the chosen ones discover that their minds, not just their spirits, have been designed for something extraordinary. And the battle for that territory is already underway. And that story is not finished. It is still being written, not in ancient Persia, not in the courts of a king whose name history has recorded, and time has distanced into something that feels remote and unreachable. It is being written right now, in the corridor you are standing in the weight you are carrying, in the specific and targeted pressure that has been applied to the exact areas of your life where the greatest potential lies. The same hand that was weaving Esther's orphan years into a garment of authority is weaving your seasons of pressure into something that you do not yet have the full language to describe, but that you have been catching glimpses of in your clearest moments. The moments when the noise quieted long enough for the truth to surface. The truth is this: you are not behind. You are not broken. You are not the exception to the promise. You are the fulfillment of it. Moving through the final stages of a preparation more thorough and more intentional and more loving than anything the corridor has been able to show you from the inside. And what comes next in this message is going to show you exactly why the mind of the chosen one is the most contested and most important territory in the entire battle that surrounds your life. You have been carrying something that the world around you could not name. And for a long time, you could not name it either. You felt it in the way your thoughts moved differently from the people around you. You felt it in the way certain ideas arrived in your mind fully formed, as if they had been handed to you from somewhere outside yourself. You felt it in the way you could walk into a situation that everyone else found impossible, and find a thread of clarity that no one else seemed to see. You called it intuition. You called it instinct. You called it a gift, or sometimes, on the harder days, you called it a burden. But science has been quietly catching up to what heaven already knew about you. And what researchers are now confirming is something that chosen ones have been experiencing for their entire lives without a vocabulary to describe it. Your mind operates at a different frequency, not metaphorically, not as a spiritual figure of speech designed to make you feel special. Literally, the electrical activity in the brain of a person who carries the kind of awareness, creativity, and intuitive depth that you carry runs at a measurably different rhythm than the brain of someone who has never been through what you have been through, who has never carried what you have been asked to carry, who has never been pressed into the shape that pressure and purpose together create. The battlefield that heaven has been fighting over is not just your circumstances. It is not just your relationship or your finances, or your health. The battlefield is your mind. And the reason the opposition has worked so hard to keep you anxious, distracted, overwhelmed, and exhausted is because a rested, aligned, fully activated chosen one is the most dangerous force that darkness has ever faced. Esther understood this in her own way. Before she could stand in that throne room and speak the words that would redirect the fate of a generation, she had to enter a period of stillness. 3 days of fasting, 3 days of silence, 3 days of stripping away every distraction and every comfort and every coping mechanism, and simply being present with the frequency of heaven. She did not walk into her defining moment unprepared. She walked in having done the inner work, having cleared the static, having tuned her mind and her spirit to the exact frequency that the moment required. And because she was tuned, the words that came out of her were not her words alone. They carried weight that moved a king. They carried authority that rearranged power. They carried a clarity that could only have come from a mind that had been brought into alignment before it was asked to perform. This is what is being asked of you now. Not 3 days of fasting, though if that is where you are being led, do not resist it. But the same principle. The willingness to stop running on the frequency of your circumstances and begin running on the frequency of your calling. Because those two frequencies are different. The frequency of your circumstances is reactive, scattered, driven by fear and urgency, and the constant pressure of everything that is demanding your attention. The frequency of your calling is focused, creative, expansive, and deeply still even in the middle of movement, and you cannot access one while you are fully submerged in the other. Chosen ones carry a specific frequency. Researchers call it gamma. It is the brainwave state associated with the highest levels of cognitive function, the moments of sudden insight that feel like revelation, the creative breakthroughs that arrive when the mind is simultaneously relaxed and intensely focused, the states of awareness that monks and mystics have described for centuries as communion with something beyond themselves. Gamma is also the frequency most consistently observed in individuals who demonstrate extraordinary levels of problem-solving, empathy, and what neuroscientists carefully describe as pattern recognition that exceeds standard expectation. In other words, the ability to see what others cannot see, to know what others do not know, to arrive at answers that the logic of the situation does not fully explain. That is not a coincidence. That is a fingerprint, and it is yours. But here is what the research also shows, and this is the part that matters for where you are right now. That frequency can be suppressed. Chronic stress, prolonged anxiety, the kind of emotional weight that comes from years of carrying more than you were designed to carry alone. All of it pushes the brain away from gamma and into lower, more survival-oriented states. States where creativity shuts down, where intuition goes quiet, where the sense of divine connection dims and the world narrows to the immediate and the urgent and the painful. This is not a spiritual failure. This is a neurological consequence of the battle you have been in. And it means that part of restoration, part of the activation that heaven has been moving you toward, involves restoring your mind to the frequency it was designed to operate on. This is where the work of a man named Dr. James Rivers becomes something you need to hear about. Dr. Rivers is a neuroscientist who spent more than 30 years studying the relationship between brainwave states and human potential. His research, developed in connection with some of the most rigorous scientific institutions in the world, including work tied to programs at MIT and research frameworks connected to NASA, led him to a discovery that he has described as the most significant finding of his career. He found that the human brain's capable of returning to its highest frequency states, not through years of meditation practice, not through pharmaceutical intervention, not through any complicated or inaccessible protocol, but through a precise, carefully engineered audio experience that takes just 7 minutes a day. He called it the genius wave, and what it does is not magic. It is not mysticism dressed in scientific language. It is brainwave entrainment, a well-documented neurological process in which the brain naturally synchronizes its electrical activity to match the frequency of an external auditory stimulus. In simple terms, when you hear the right combination of sounds at the right frequencies, your brain follows. It moves from the stressed, scattered, survival-oriented state that years of difficulty have pushed it into, and it returns to the theta and gamma states where memory sharpens, creativity expands, intuition opens, and the kind of clarity that changes decisions and therefore changes lives becomes accessible again. 7 minutes. That is the optimized duration that Dr. Rivers identified through his research. Long enough to guide the brain into full entrainment, short enough that the process does not induce fatigue or overstimulation. 7 minutes of listening with headphones to a precisely engineered audio track, and the brain begins returning to the frequency it was always meant to operate on. The frequency that the opposition has been working to suppress. The frequency that Esther accessed through her 3 days of stillness. The frequency that you have felt in your best moments, your clearest moments. The moments where everything aligned and you knew exactly what you were supposed to do next. And the people who have used this are not a small number. More than 19,000 individuals have now gone through this experience. A woman who had not slept through a single night in 14 months listened to the audio and woke the next morning having slept until dawn for the first time in over a year. By the following Monday, she received a call she had been waiting on for the better part of a year. A man who had been stuck in the same professional position for 6 years, watching opportunities pass him by while his mind ran in anxious circles that he could not stop, began listening, and within weeks described a shift in the way his mind was working that he said felt like a fog lifting. He stopped reacting and started seeing. He stopped surviving and started creating. These are not extraordinary people who had extraordinary advantages. These are people in circumstances very much like yours, carrying weight very much like yours, whose minds simply needed to be brought back to the frequency they were designed for. A third person comes to mind, and her story belongs here because it is the one that reaches the ones who are carrying not just emotional weight, but financial weight on top of it. She was a single mother working 2 jobs, behind on rent for the 3rd consecutive month, her mind so consumed by the mathematics of survival that she described her thinking as feeling like a computer running too many programs at once, slow, overheating, unable to complete a single clear thought before the next demand crashed into it. She had no margin for anything that felt like self-improvement. She told herself that tools like this were for people whose basic needs were already met, but something in her, the same thing that is in you, kept pulling. She listened for 7 minutes on her lunch break in her car. She described what happened over the following 2 weeks, not as a miracle, but as a clearing. The anxiety that had been generating noise in her mind at a constant frequency began to quiet. And in that quiet, she started seeing her situation differently, not through rose-colored glasses, but with a clarity she had not had access to in years. 3 months later, she had consolidated her income into one better-paying position and had moved her family into stable housing. She did not win the lottery. she accessed the thinking that had been buried under the noise of survival. And that thinking changed the decisions. And the decisions changed everything. Now, before the price is mentioned, something needs to be said directly. Because it is the honest thing to do, and because the third story that was just shared deserves this honesty even more than the others. $39 is not nothing. If you are the person eating lunch in your car between two jobs, if you are the one doing the mental math of which bill gets paid this week and which one waits, if $39 represents a real sacrifice rather than a casual transaction, that feeling is valid. That hesitation is not weakness. It is the weight of real responsibility, and it deserves to be honored before a single word about price is spoken. So hear this first. No one in a genuine financial emergency should stretch themselves to purchase anything, including this. But if you are in the space between genuine crisis and comfortable, the space where the money exists but the question is whether this is worth it, then consider what the cost of the scattered mind has already been. The missed opportunities, the decisions made from anxiety rather than clarity, the version of your professional and personal life that has been running at a fraction of its capacity because the frequency of survival has been drowning out the frequency of your calling. That cost does not show up as a single charge on a statement. It accumulates silently in the gap between where you are and where you were designed to be. $39 to begin closing that gap, backed by a 90-day full refund guarantee, is not an expense. It is the first investment made from the clarity that is about to be restored. The Genius Wave is normally priced at $49. Through the link in the pinned comment, it is available today for $39. And it comes with a 90-day money-back guarantee, 100%. No conditions, no arguments, because Dr. Rivers is not asking you to trust a promise. He is asking you to test an experience. If after 90 days you do not feel the shift, you get every dollar back. One final and important warning. There are imitation products circulating that use similar language but are not the original. The only legitimate source is the link in the pinned comment and the description below this video. Do not purchase from any other source. What you receive from an imitation is not what has been described here, and it will not produce what 19,000 people have now experienced. This offer at $39 is also not permanent. The pricing window is limited, and when it closes, it closes. If this message has found you today, that timing is not accidental. It is invitation, and invitations have a window. Now take a breath, because what comes next is going to bring you back into the deeper current of what this message is really about. The product was a provision, but the purpose is what you were born for. And the next section of this message is going to take you into the place where chosen ones discover that the correction they have been resisting is not their enemy. It is their crown being fitted in real time. There is a bridge between what you just received and where this message is taking you next. The provision that was just placed in front of you was not a detour from your destiny. It was part of it. Heaven does not separate the practical from the sacred. The tools that restore your mind and the truth that restores your spirit are both moving in the same direction, toward the same version of you that was designed before you drew your first breath. So do not file what you just heard away in a different category from what is coming now. Let it sit alongside it. Let the science and the sacred occupy the same space in you, because in the life of a chosen one, they always have. Now come back into the current. Come back into the word that has been building since the moment this message began. Esther did not receive her crown without first receiving her correction. This is the part of her story that the celebratory versions tend to skip over. because correction is not comfortable to sit with, and it is even less comfortable to recognize in your own life. But it is the part that matters most for where you are standing right now. Because you have been praying for a crown while quietly, and perhaps unconsciously, resisting the very process that makes a crown possible. And heaven, in its relentless and patient love for you, has not stopped the process. It has simply been waiting for you to stop fighting it. When Mordecai sent word to Esther that she needed to go before the king, that she needed to use her position and her access to intercede for her people, her first response was resistance. Not rebellion, not hardness of heart, but the very human, very understandable response of a person who could see clearly what the risk was and felt the weight of it pressing against everything in her that wanted to be safe. She sent word back explaining the law, explaining that entering the king's presence, uninvited, carried the penalty of death, explaining that she had not been summoned and that the protocol was clear. She did not refuse out of selfishness. She resisted out of fear. And fear, even in the most chosen of souls, will always try to dress itself in the clothing of reason. This is what your resistance looks like too. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It does not announce itself as disobedience or doubt. It shows up dressed as practicality, as wisdom, as patience, as waiting for the right moment, the better circumstances, the clearer sign, the stronger feeling. It shows up as the prayer that asks for change, while the hands quietly hold on to the thing that needs to be released. You have been so reasonable in your resistance that you have almost convinced yourself it is not resistance at all, but something in you, the part that found this message, the part that has stayed through every section, knows the truth. You have been praying for change and resisting the correction that change requires. And those two things cannot coexist in the same season indefinitely, because the correction is not punishment. This needs to land in you today with more weight than it perhaps ever has before. The correction is not proof that you failed. It is not evidence that heaven is disappointed in you, or that the promise was revoked, or that someone else has been chosen in your place. The correction is the tailoring. It is the precise, skilled, sometimes uncomfortable work of adjusting the garment of your life so that it fits the body of your destiny. A garment that does not fit properly is not worn well, no matter how magnificent the fabric. And heaven is not interested in a magnificent life that you cannot carry properly. Heaven is interested in the version of you that wears your calling with authority, with ease, with the kind of settled confidence that only comes from having been through the fitting room. Esther went through the fitting room. Those 3 days of fasting were not just spiritual preparation. They were the final correction before the coronation of her purpose. They were the moment where every fear was laid on the altar, and every excuse was surrendered, and every reasonable argument for staying safe was really into the hands of something larger than her ability to manage outcomes. She came out of those 3 days different, not louder, not more impressive on the outside, but settled in a way she had not been settled before, rooted in a way that the king's throne room could not shake, corrected in the deepest sense of the word, which is to say, aligned, brought into the precise position that the moment required. And when she walked into that throne room, she walked in as someone who had already surrendered the outcome. That is the secret that the story holds. She did not walk in certain of survival. She walked in certain of obedience. She said, "If I perish, I perish." And in that surrender, in that complete release of the need to control what happened next, she became uncorrectable by fear. Because a person who has already given their life to the assignment cannot be stopped by the threat of losing it. This is the invitation that is standing in front of you right now. not to be reckless, not to abandon wisdom or ignore the real weight of real consequences, but to reach the place where the assignment becomes more important than the outcome, where the obedience becomes more important than the safety, where the correction is received not as an attack on your identity, but as the final shaping of it, before the moment that everything has been building toward. The book of Proverbs carries this truth in a way that cuts through every layer of resistance with surgical precision. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. Lean not on your own understanding. That phrase is directed at the part of you that has been holding the resistance together with logic. The part that has been building a reasonable case for why the timing is not right, why the risk is too great, why waiting a little longer is the wiser choice. Heaven is not asking you to abandon your mind. Heaven is asking you to stop letting your mind be the highest authority in the room. Because your understanding, however sharp and however sincere, is operating from incomplete information. It can only see what you have already experienced. But the path that is being straightened for you leads through territory that your understanding has never mapped. Submit in all your ways. Not in the comfortable ways, not in the areas where obedience costs you nothing, but in all your ways, including the area where the correction feels the most threatening, including the relationship that needs the honest conversation, including the assignment that you keep saying you will begin when the conditions are better, including the version of yourself that you have been maintaining because it is familiar, even though you have known for longer than you want to. Admit that it is not the version that was chosen. Esther submitted, and on the other side of her submission, an entire people lived who would otherwise have perished. The ripple of one chosen one's obedience extended beyond anything she could have measured from where she stood trembling at the threshold of the throne room. And the ripple of your obedience, the lives that will be touched and turned and saved by the version of you that comes out on the other side of this correction. That ripple is also beyond your ability to calculate from where you are standing right now. But heaven has already done the math, and the number is worth everything the correction is asking you to surrender. And the straightening of your path does not require your understanding of every turn it takes. It only requires your willingness to keep walking it. That is what submission looks like in the ordinary hours, not a single dramatic moment of surrender, but the daily, repeated, quietly courageous choice to keep moving in the direction that the Word has been pointing you toward, even when the destination is not yet visible, even when the progress is not yet measurable, even when the only evidence you have that the path is being straightened is the fact that you are still on it and still choosing to trust the one who promised to make it straight. Esther walked a straight path into the throne room, not because the path was easy, but because the one who straightened it had already gone before her into the space she was about to enter. And the same is true of the space that is opening in front of you right now. Heaven has already been in the room you are being sent into. The arrangements have already been made. The alignments have already been set. The outcome has already been seen by the one whose vision is not limited by the walls of the corridor you are currently standing in. You are not walking into the unknown. You are walking into the already known, the space that has been prepared with a precision and a care that your understanding, however sharp, could not have designed on its own. So release the need to understand every step before you take it. Release the requirement that the path makes sense from inside the corridor before you are willing to walk it. The path was not designed to make sense from inside the corridor. It was designed to make sense from the other side of the crossing, looking back, when you can finally see what the turns were building toward and why the timing was what it was, and why the correction that felt like loss was actually the most loving and the most precise thing that could have happened to you in that season. The crossing is close. And the next section of this message is going to walk you directly into the heart of why. There is a particular kind of pain that chosen ones carry that does not have a clean name in ordinary language. It is not grief exactly, though it contains grief. It is not loneliness exactly, though it wears loneliness like a second skin. It is the pain of being in the middle, of having seen enough to know that where you are is not where you are going, but not yet having arrived at the place that the seeing has promised. It is the pain of the corridor, the space between the door that has closed behind you and the door that has not yet opened in front of you. And if you are honest with yourself right now, you will acknowledge that this is exactly where you are. You are in the corridor. And the corridor is one of the most disorienting places a chosen soul can inhabit, because it looks, from the inside, almost exactly like being lost. But you are not lost. You are between, and between is not the same as lost, even though the feeling is nearly identical. Lost means there is no destination. Between means you are moving toward one, even when the movement is invisible. Even when the evidence of progress is so subtle that the enemy has no trouble convincing you that nothing is happening. Something is happening. It has been happening the entire time you have been in this corridor, and Esther knows exactly what this place feels like. Because before the throne room, there was the waiting. Before the moment of her greatest courage, there was a season of profound uncertainty where she did not know what her life was building toward, where the calling she carried had no visible outlet, where the preparation she was undergoing had no announced purpose. She was being shaped in silence. She was being fitted for something she had not yet been shown. And the shaping, as it always does, felt less like preparation and more like pressure. Less like the loving hands of a craftsman, and more like the weight of a world that did not know her name. You know this feeling. You have been in the shaping. You have felt the pressure and interpreted it as punishment, because nothing in your immediate circumstances offered you the alternative interpretation. No voice came down and said, "This pressure is purpose." No sign appeared on the wall of your corridor explaining that the tightness you feel is the garment of your destiny being fitted to the specific contours of your character. You had to feel it without the explanation. You had to carry it, without the comfort of knowing when it would end. And you did. You are still here, which means you carried it, which means the shaping worked, which means you are closer to the threshold than the darkness in this corridor has been trying to convince you. Because heaven does not waste the corridor. Every chosen one who has ever walked into their defining moment came through a corridor first. The corridor is not the punishment before the promise. The corridor is the last stage of preparations before the promise becomes the present. It is where the final adjustments are made, where the deepest layers of fear are confronted, where the identity is stripped of everything that was never truly part of it, so that what remains is the version that is, strong enough and clear enough and rooted enough to carry the weight of what is coming. And what is coming for you is significant. This is not motivational language designed to make you feel good in the moment and forgotten by morning. This is the word that this message has been building toward since the first sentence. What is coming for you is significant. The room you are being positioned to walk into, the lives you are being prepared to touch, The assignment that has been taking shape in the hidden place through every season of pressure and every night of tears and every moment of feeling like you were too much and not enough at the same time. It is significant. And the corridor you are in right now is the last corridor before you cross over into it. But here is what heaven needs you to understand about the crossing. The crossing does not happen to you. You participate in it. The door does not simply open, and the light does not simply flood in, and the next chapter does not simply begin while you stand passively waiting. The crossing requires a decision. It requires the moment that Esther faced when she rose from 3 days of fasting and said, "I will go." Not "I will think about going." Not "I will go when the fear subsides." Not "I will go when the circumstances rearrange themselves into something less terrifying." I will go. Present tense. Decided. Final. The kind of decision that heaven can work with because it does not require heaven to wait for you to feel ready. You will never feel fully ready. This is one of the most important things that this message can give you. The feeling of readiness is a myth that the enemy has been using to keep chosen ones standing in corridors long past the moment when the door opened. Readiness is not a feeling. Readiness is a decision. It is the decision to move toward the assignment. With whatever you currently have, whatever faith you currently carry, whatever courage is available to you in this exact moment, and to trust that what you are moving toward will meet you with what you are missing as you go. Esther was not fully ready when she walked into the throne room. She was decided. And decided is better than ready, because decided does not require the circumstances to cooperate. Decided does not require the fear to disappear. Decided does not require the outcome to be guaranteed. Decided simply requires the will to move, and the trust that the one who called you into the corridor is the same one who opened the door at the end of it. Now hear this next part carefully, because this is where the message moves into territory that the chosen ones need to sit with deeply. Every correction you have been resisting, and there is at least one, you know which one, has a specific purpose. It is not general. It is not a vague spiritual housekeeping exercise. It is targeted. It is aimed at a specific area of your life where the gap between who you are currently being and who you were created to be is wide enough to delay the crossing. Heaven is not interested in delay. Heaven has been working toward this moment in your life with a patience and a precision that would stagger you if you could see it from the outside. And the last thing standing between you and the crossing is the correction you have been treating as optional. It is not optional. You have been trying to pray your way past it. You have been asking heaven to move you forward while leaving that particular area untouched. And heaven, in its love, has been holding the door, not closing it, not locking it, not transferring your assignment to someone else. Simply holding it and waiting for you to stop negotiating with the correction and start receiving it. Because on the other side of that correction is not just relief. On the other side is clarity you have not had access to in years. On the other side is the gamma frequency of your mind, finally running at the level it was designed for, unburdened by the resistance that has been consuming the energy that belongs to your purpose. On the other side is the version of your life that you have been catching glimpses of in your clearest moments. The version that made you feel, even briefly, that it was real, that it was possible, that you were not crazy for believing in it. That version is real. It has always been real. It has been waiting in the room on the other side of the door that the corridor has been leading you toward. And the door is closer than it has ever been before. The first letter to the Corinthians carries this truth with a precision that stops the breath of anyone who receives it, honestly. No eye has seen, no ear has heard, and no human mind has conceived the things God has prepared for those who love him. 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 9. No human mind has conceived it, not your mind, with all its hoping and imagining, and late-night dreaming about what your life could look like. Not the minds of the people around you who love you and believe in you and have spoken good things over your future. Not even the enemy, who has studied you and opposed you and worked against you for years, has been able to conceive what is being held in reserve for you. It is beyond the reach of imagination from inside the corridor, but it is not beyond the reach of the decision to cross. Make the decision, not tomorrow, not when the fear is smaller, not when the circumstances are more cooperative. Now, in this corridor, with this weight still on your shoulders and this uncertainty still in your chest and this door still closed in front of you, decide. And watch what happens when a chosen one stops waiting to feel ready and starts moving as if the door is already open. Because for you it already is. There is something that happens in the body of a chosen one when they finally stop performing and start practicing. You have spent so much of your life performing. Performing strength when you were exhausted. Performing certainty when you were riddled with doubt. Performing fineness in rooms where you were anything but fine, because the alternative, letting people see the full weight of what you were carrying, felt more dangerous than the performance itself. And the performance is exhausting in a way that sleep cannot fix, because it does not drain the body. It drains the soul. It pulls from the deepest reserves of the person you actually are, the one underneath the presentation. The one that heaven sees when all the performing falls away. But there is a practice that is different from performance, and this is what this section of the message is about. Not the external presentation of your faith, not the curated version of your journey that you offer to the world, but the actual daily practice of the chosen one, the unglamorous, unseeable, deeply private work of staying aligned when everything around you is pulling toward chaos. The practice that Esther engaged in during those 3 days that no one witnessed. The practice that happens before the throne room moment, in the silence, in the stillness, in the place where it is only you and the thing that called you. Because the throne room moments are rare. Most of your life is not lived in the throne room. Most of your life is lived in the ordinary hours, the Tuesday mornings and the Thursday evenings, and the unremarkable stretches of time that do not feel like destiny in motion, even though they are exactly that. And what you do in those ordinary hours is what determines who you are when the extraordinary hour arrives. Esther did not become the woman who could stand before a king in a single dramatic moment. She became that woman in the accumulation of ordinary momentness that preceded it. In the daily practice of faithfulness, of alignment, of keeping herself tuned to something larger than her immediate circumstances, even when those circumstances offered her every reason to tune out. The daily practice of the chosen one begins with stillness, not the absence of activity, not the performance of peace, but the genuine, chosen, deliberate act of becoming quiet enough to hear what is being spoken in the frequency beneath the noise. You live in a world that is designed to prevent this kind of stillness. Everything around you is engineered for stimulation, for reaction, for the constant low-level emergency that keeps your nervous system in a state of alert and your mind running at the survival frequency rather than the frequency of your calling. The notifications, the demands, the endless stream of information that requires your attention and your response and your energy, all of it is a system that produces exactly the kind of scattered, anxious, depleted mind that cannot access the clarity it was designed for. This is why the practice requires intention. It does not happen by accident. You do not drift into alignment the way you drift into distraction. Alignment is chosen. It is fought for. It is protected the way you protect something that you know has enemies, because it does. The stillness that allows you to hear the frequency of your calling is one of the most contested territories in the invisible war that surrounds your life. And the enemy does not attack it with dramatic, obvious assaults. He attacks it with busyness, with reasonable demands on your time, with good things that crowd out the best thing, with the relentless, gentle, almost invisible pressure of a life that is always slightly too full for the practice that would change everything. So the practice begins with the decision to protect the stillness, to treat it not as a luxury that gets the leftover minutes of your day, but as the foundation that every other hour is built on. 7 minutes, given fully, with intention, and with the kind of focused surrender that Esther brought to her 3 days of fasting, can reorient the entire trajectory of a day. Not because of any magic in the number, but because of what happens in a mind that is brought into alignment before it is sent into the world. A mind that has been tuned returns to the frequency of clarity, of creativity, of the deep intuitive knowing that chosen ones carry, but frequently cannot access because the noise has covered it over. And the practice does not stop with the stillness. From the stillness flows the word, not a casual glancing engagement with scripture, but the kind of deep, slow, deliberate reading that lets a single sentence open into a room you can walk around in. Esther knew the word of her people. She had been raised in it by Mordecai, shaped by its rhythms and its promises and its warnings and its stories of men and women who had stood in impossible positions and found that the one who called them was also the one who equipped them. That word was not decoration in her life. It was foundation, and foundation does not show on the surface. You do not see a foundation. You see what it holds up. And what it holds up, in the life of a chosen one who is rooted in the Word, is a stability that the most violent seasons cannot ultimately dismantle. From the Word flows the prayer, not the performed prayer, not the recited words that move from the memory to the mouth without passing through the heart, but the real conversation, the one that begins not with the right language, but with the honest one. The prayer that Esther must have prayed in those 3 days, that was not eloquent, that was not structured, that was not the kind of thing anyone would put in a book, but that was absolutely real and absolutely heard. The prayer that says, I do not know how to do this. I do not feel strong enough for this. I am afraid in ways that I cannot fully articulate. But I am here, and I am choosing, in spite of everything I feel, to trust that you are also here, and that what you have asked of me is something you will also equip me for. That prayer is the most powerful one you will ever pray, not because of its eloquence, but because of its honesty. Heaven does not require your performance in prayer any more than it requires your performance anywhere else. It requires your presence, your real, unguarded, unhidden presence. The version of you that is tired, the version of you that is uncertain, the version of you that has been in this corridor longer than you expected and is beginning to wonder if the door at the end is real. Heaven can work with that version. Heaven has been waiting for that version, because that version is not hiding behind presentation. And when the presentation comes down, the connection that was always available but was partially blocked by the performance finally opens fully. From the prayer flows the action. This is where many chosen ones stall. The stillness, the word, the prayer, these feel sacred and safe. But the action, the step that the practice is building toward, the movement out of the corridor and toward the door, this is where the practice meets the resistance. And the resistance, when it shows up at the point of action, is not a sign that the action is wrong. It is a sign that the action is significant. Resistance does not waste its energy on the inconsequential. It reserves its greatest opposition for the movements that carry the greatest potential to disrupt what it has been building in your life. So when you feel the resistance rise at the point of action, do not retreat into more preparation. You have been preparing. The preparation has been happening in every section of this message, in every season of your life that felt like mere survival but was actually formation. The preparation is not the problem. The willingness to act on it is the next frontier, and the practice of the chosen one is not complete until the stillness and the word and the prayer have produced the step. The small, specific, today-sized step that moves you from the corridor toward the door. Esther's practice produced a step. Go before the king. 3 words, terrifying in their simplicity and their cost. But she took them. And that step, that one practiced, prayed over, faithfully prepared step, changed the course of history for an entire people. Your step will not look like hers. It will be specific to your life, to your calling, to the precise shape of the correction that heaven has been moving you toward. But it will be a step, a real one, a chosen one, a step that the stillness prepared, the word informed, and the prayer released. And if this message has meant something to you, if these words have found something in you that needed to be found, then do something small but significant right now. Like this video, not as a gesture toward an algorithm, but as a declaration that you received something real here, that the word found you, that you are not leaving this moment unchanged. Share it with someone who is also in a corridor, someone whose silence tells you they are carrying weight they have not named out loud. You do not need to explain it to them. Simply send it. Simply let the message find them the way it found you, not by accident, not by the algorithm alone, but by the hand of something that knew they needed it before you did. Subscribe if you have not already, because this is not the only word that has been prepared for you here. There are more messages, more sections of the larger story that heaven is telling through this space, and staying connected means the next one finds you when it is supposed to find you, rather than after the moment has passed. And if this work has carried you, if it has held something in you that needed holding, there is a link in the description and in the pinned comment where you can sow a seed of support, not as an obligation, not as a transaction, but as an act of faith planted in ground that has already proven it produces a harvest in the lives of those who receive from it. The practice is yours now. Take it with you into the ordinary hours. Let it be the foundation that no season can shake. And come back for the next section, because what is ahead of you in this message is going to take you into territory that the practice alone has made you ready to enter. There is a silence that heaven uses that is unlike any other silence you have ever experienced. It is not the silence of absence. It is not the silence of a room where no one is home, where you knocked and no one answered, where you called out and the echo came back empty. It is the silence of a presence so large and so close that it fills every corner of the space around you without making a sound that your natural ears can detect. And if you have been in a season where heaven has felt quiet, where your prayers have felt like they were traveling a very long distance before landing anywhere, where the connection you once felt with something larger than yourself has dimmed to a frequency you can barely locate, then this section is the one that was written specifically for the ache that silence has left in you. Because the silence of heaven is not the same as the silence of abandonment. And the enemy has spent considerable energy working to make sure you cannot tell the difference. He needs you to interpret the quiet as rejection, He needs you to read the stillness as evidence that you have been left, that the promise was revoked, that the choosing was temporary and has now expired, that whatever favor once rested on your life has moved on to someone more deserving, someone more consistent, someone whose faith has not had the cracks in it that yours has developed through the long seasons of waiting. He needs that interpretation to take root in you, because a chosen one who believes they have been abandoned is a chosen one who stops moving, who stops reaching, who stops being dangerous to everything that darkness has been building in the spaces around them. Do not give him that. Do not hand over that interpretation. Not today, not after everything you have already carried to get to this section of this message. Esther knew the silence of heaven. In those 3 days of fasting, in the stripping away of every comfort and every distraction, there must have been moments where the silence was deafening, where the weight of what she was being asked to do pressed against the absence of an audible answer, and the gap between the two felt impossible to stand in. She had no burning bush. She had no audible voice from heaven announcing that her plan would succeed, that the king would extend the golden scepter, that she would walk out of the throne room alive and victorious. She had the silence and the instruction and the choice of what to do with both of them. She chose to move, not because the silence resolved into clarity, not because the fear subsided and the answer became obvious, but because she understood something about the silence of heaven that is one of the most important things a chosen one can ever learn. The silence is not the absence of God. The silence is the presence of trust. It is heaven saying, I have told you what you need to know. I have prepared you for what you need to face. I have placed inside you everything that this moment requires, and now I am going to be quiet. Not because I have left, but because this is the part where you walk in what you have been given, rather than waiting for another word to carry you past the courage that the last word already released. Heaven trusts you with the silence. That is what you have been misreading as abandonment. It is trust. It is the confidence of a father who has trained his child and now stands back, not to abandon the child to the moment, but to let the child discover what the training actually produced. The discovery cannot happen if the father keeps intervening. The strength cannot be known if it is never required to bear weight on its own. And so heaven steps back into a silence that feels like distance, but is actually proximity of the most intense kind, watching, present, ready to move the moment the movement is needed, but unwilling to rob you of the discovery of what you are actually carrying. What you are actually carrying is more than you have given yourself credit for in this season. The inventory of what has been placed inside you, the gifts, the depth, the capacity for endurance, the clarity that cuts through noise when you are operating at the frequency you were designed for, the compassion that has been refined by your own suffering into something that can reach people in places that untested comfort could never access. All of it has been growing in the silence. All of it has been deepening in the very season that felt like spiritual winter. The roots go deepest in winter. The tree that looks dead from the outside is doing its most essential work in the cold, extending its root system into the earth in preparation for a spring that it cannot see, but is already moving toward with everything it has. You are that tree, and the silence is not your winter dying. It is your root system extending. And here is what needs to be said about the isolation that often accompanies this silence. The chosen ones who are in the deepest seasons of preparation often find themselves in a particular kind of aloneness that is chosen, and not comfortable, and not resolved by simply being around more people. It is the aloneness of the set apart. of the one who has been pulled out of the general current and placed in a different stream, a quieter stream, a stream that does not have the noise and the company and the visible momentum of the larger river. And from inside that stream, the loneliness can feel like a verdict, like evidence that something is wrong with you, that the isolation is consequence rather than calling. It is not consequence, it is calling. The set-apart place is where the deep formation happens. It is where the identity is established at a level that crowds and community, however good and however necessary in their season, cannot reach. There is a work that can only be done in you when you are alone with the silence and the one who speaks in it. And if you have been in that alone place, if you have felt the particular ache of being separated from the ease and the belonging that other people seem to carry so naturally, then hear this with everything in you. You were not rejected into that solitude. You were chosen into it. And the one who chose you into it is the same one who will choose you out of it at exactly the right moment, into exactly the right company, the people who were also being formed in their own silence for the assignment that requires both of you. Because chosen ones do not ultimately walk alone. The isolation is a season, not a sentence. It is the preparation for a convergence, the gathering of the ones who were each being shaped separately for a purpose that requires their combination. And when that convergence happens, when the ones who were formed in silence find each other, the recognition is immediate and unmistakable. You will not need to explain yourself to them. You will not need to justify the depth of what you carry or apologize for the intensity of what you see. They will know. Because they were in a corridor too. Because the silence shaped them the same way it shaped you. Because the root system that grew in their winter will recognize the root system that grew in yours. The silence is not your enemy. The positioning is not punishment. The isolation is not rejection. These are the sacred instruments of a preparation that is nearly complete, working on a soul that was chosen before it was formed, for a moment that heaven has been building toward with a patience that eternity alone can sustain. The book of Isaiah speaks to this place with a tenderness that reaches into the exact ache of the set-apart season. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 31. Hope in the Lord, not certainty, not the feeling of confidence or the evidence of progress or the visible movement of circumstances in the right direction. Hope, the chosen, sustained, stubborn decision to remain expectant in the silence, to keep the posture of receiving even when nothing is arriving in the forms you expected, to walk and not faint, even in the season where walking feels like all you can manage and soaring feels like a language spoken in a country you have not yet reached. You will reach it. The wings are not a future gift. They are a present reality that the silence has been growing in you while you were focused on the weight. And the moment of soaring is not as far from this corridor as the length of the silence has made it seem. Heaven has not forgotten your name. Heaven has not moved on to someone else. Heaven is not disappointed in the pace of your progress, or the number of times you have stumbled, or the distance between the person you are still becoming and the person you were designed to be. Heaven is here, in the silence, closer than it has felt in the longest parts of this season, closer than the ache has been able to tell you, closer than the enemy's interpretation of the quiet has been willing to let you believe. And what is coming in the next section of this message is the word that the silence has been preparing you to receive. The word about what is at stake in the next decision you make. The word that the chosen ones who arrive at this place in the message are always, without exception, exactly ready to hear. Stay, the silence has been speaking, and you are finally in a place quiet enough to hear what it has been saying all along. And that word begins here. Because the silence was never the end of the conversation. It was the preparation for the most important part of it. Everything that has been built in you through the waiting, through the isolation, through the seasons that felt like spiritual winter while the roots were growing deeper than you knew, all of it has been moving toward a single threshold, a single decision point that heaven has been quietly constructing around you while you were focused on surviving. Silence. You are standing at that threshold now, not tomorrow. Not in the next season when the circumstances feel more favorable. Now, in this moment, with everything you have carried and everything you have survived and everything that the silence has grown in you that you have not yet fully seen. The next section of this message is not gentle. It is not the comfort of the corridor. It is the word that the corridor was preparing you to receive. The word that comes to the chosen ones who have stayed long enough, been honest enough, and been broken open enough to finally hear what heaven has been waiting to say without softening it. Come forward. The threshold is real, and it is time. You have arrived at the place in this message that the enemy hoped you would never reach. Every distraction that pulled at you from the moment this began, every notification, every interruption, every reasonable excuse to pause and return later, all of it was designed to prevent you from arriving at exactly this section. Because this is where the message stops being comfortable. This is where the word stops circling the edges of what needs to be said and walks directly into the center of it. This is where heaven stops whispering and speaks at full volume into the part of you that has been holding the last piece of resistance like a stone in a closed fist. Knowing it needs to be released, knowing the release is the breakthrough, but not yet willing to open the hand. Open the hand. That is what this section is asking of you, not gently, with love, yes, with the full and uncompromising love of a heaven that has walked beside you through every section of this corridor and has not once looked away from the weight you carry, but not gently. Because gentle is what the last several seasons have been. And gentle has not yet moved the thing that needs to be moved. Sometimes love speaks in a frequency that cannot be mistaken for anything other than what it is. Not anger, not disappointment, but the clear, direct, impossible to misinterpret voice of a father who has watched his child stand at the edge of their breakthrough for long enough and has decided that today is the day the child crosses over, whether the crossing feels comfortable or not. Esther had this moment. It came through the voice of Mordecai, delivered not with softness, but with the full weight of truth that the moment required. He did not comfort her resistance. He did not validate her fear. He named what was at stake with a precision that left no room for negotiation. He told her that her silence was not neutral, that her decision to stay hidden, to protect herself, to choose safety over assignment, would not leave her untouched while the consequences fell on others. He told her that deliverance would come from another place if she remained silent, but that she and her family would not be exempt from what followed. And then he asked the question that cut through every layer of her reasonable resistance and landed in the place where the truth lives. Who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this? That question is being asked of you right now. Not as a rhetorical flourish, not as an inspirational phrase to carry lightly through the rest of your day, as a real and urgent and pressing question that requires a real and specific answer from the part of you that has been in the silence of the last several sections, letting the word do its work. Who knows whether you have not arrived at this exact moment in your life with this exact history, carrying this exact weight, having survived these exact seasons for such a time as this, for this decision, for this crossing, for this specific act of obedience that you have been circling for longer than you want to admit. Because the final rebellion is the most dangerous one. Not the rebellion of the beginning, not the early resistance of someone who has not yet heard enough to know what they are resisting. The final rebellion is the rebellion of the one who has heard everything, who has received the word, sat in the silence, felt the preparation, understood the assignment, and still, in the last moment, before the crossing, chooses to remain on the familiar side of the threshold. That rebellion is not born of ignorance. It is born of something older and quieter and more insidious than ignorance. It is born of a comfort with the corridor that has developed over years of waiting. The corridor became familiar. The wait became manageable. The version of you that exists in the in-between became an identity you did not realize you had started to protect. But the corridor was never your home. It was always a passageway. And a passageway that is mistaken for a home becomes a prison without bars. One that holds you not through force but through the slow, subtle accumulation of days spent not crossing over. And heaven, which has been patient beyond anything your understanding can fully appreciate, is telling you today that the days of the corridor have reached their number, that the preparation is complete, that the root system is deep enough, the formation is thorough enough, the word has gone far enough into the depths of you to have done what it was sent to do, and what remains is the decision. Type these words in the comments right now. I am ready to cross. Let those 4 words be your declaration, your covenant, your public acknowledgement that the message has found what it came to find in you, and that you are no longer negotiating with the threshold. Because there is something that happens when a chosen one moves, a declaration from the interior to the exterior, from the private knowing to the spoken word, from the thought to the act of typing it where others can witness it. It becomes real in a different way. It takes on a weight that intention alone does not carry. It becomes the kind of seed that heaven can water, because it has broken through the surface of the internal and entered the world where things grow. I am ready to cross. Type it, mean it, and then stay with what comes next. Because what comes next is the warning. And the warning is not designed to frighten you. It is designed to inform you with the precision and the care of someone who wants you to arrive at the other side of this threshold, fully aware of what the crossing requires and what the alternative costs. The alternative costs more than the crossing. This is not manipulation. This is mathematics. The cost of obedience is real. It involves the release of the familiar, the surrender of the controlled outcome, the willingness to be seen in the vulnerability of the step, the exposure that comes with moving out of the corridor and into the open. These are real costs. They are not nothing. And anyone who tells you that the crossing is effortless is not telling you the truth that you need to hear right now. But the cost of remaining is compounding. Every day spent in the corridor past the moment of readiness is a day of purpose running at a deficit. The people who need what is on the other side of your crossing, the ones who are waiting for the version of you that has been formed in this preparation, they are not indefinitely available to be reached. The windows of assignment have seasons, the alignments that heaven has been arranging, the convergences of people and circumstances and timing that are designed to produce the breakthrough that your obedience was always meant to unlock. These are not eternally patient with the chosen one's delay. They have a patience that is vast but not infinite. And heaven is telling you today, with the love and the directness that this moment requires, that the window is open, that the alignment is present, that the threshold is standing at its fullest width in this season of your life, and that what you do with this moment is consequential in a way that the corridor has not prepared you to fully feel until now. This is not the time to ask for one more confirmation. You have had confirmations. This message is a confirmation. The fact that you are still here, having traveled through every section of this word without leaving, is a confirmation. The recognition you felt in the first section when the signs of the chosen ones were named, that recognition was a confirmation. The way specific sentences have landed in specific places in you throughout this message, places that you have not shown anyone, and that you did not expect a message to be able to find, that is confirmation. You are not lacking confirmation. You are standing in a room full of it, asking heaven to bring more, because the confirmation that is already present requires a response that you are not quite ready to give. Give it anyway. That is the word of this section. Give the response anyway. Move toward the threshold anyway. Release the stone from the closed fist anyway. Not because the fear is gone. Not because the outcome is guaranteed. Not because every question has been answered and every doubt has been resolved, but because the one who called you into this corridor is trustworthy, because the preparation was real, because the root system is deeper than you know, and because the rebellion of the almost ready chosen one who turns back at the last threshold is the most costly rebellion of all. Not because heaven abandons them, but because they spend the rest of their life knowing they were at the edge and chose the familiar over the extraordinary. You were not chosen for the familiar. You were chosen for the extraordinary. And the extraordinary is standing on the other side of the decision that this section has been building toward from its first word. The Gospel of Mark carries a moment that belongs in this section, a moment where a man stands at his own threshold and receives the most direct invitation that heaven ever spoke in human form. Jesus looked at him and loved him. "One thing you lack," he said. "Go, sell everything you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come, follow me." Mark chapter 10, verse 21. One thing you lack. Not many things. Not a complete overhaul of everything you are. One thing. The one specific thing that is standing between the you that exists in this corridor and the you that crosses over into the assignment. Heaven already knows what it is, and somewhere in the reading of this section, so do you. The correction is not a mystery. It has been the quiet knowledge underneath everything else. The thing you have been successfully not thinking about directly, while thinking about everything around it. Think about it directly now. Name it. And then do the thing that the man in that moment could not bring himself to do. Choose the crossing over the familiar comfort of the thing that needs to be released. Choose the threshold over the stone in the closed fist. Choose the extraordinary that heaven has been building toward over the manageable version of a life that was always meant to be so much more. The threshold is real, the door is open, and you are ready. You are one decision away. That sentence is not hyperbole. It is not the language of motivation that inflates small moments into false significance. It is the precise and literal truth of where you are standing right now. Having traveled through every section of this message, having received every word that was sent to find you, having arrived at this place in the corridor where the door at the end is so close that you can feel the change in the air around it. One decision, not one perfect performance, not one flawless execution of everything you have been taught, not one dramatic cinematic moment of transformation that resolves every open question in your life simultaneously. One decision, The kind that heaven can work with, the kind that changes the bloodline. Because that is what Esther's decision did. She did not know that when she rose from those 3 days of fasting and said, "I will go," she was making a decision that would be recorded for thousands of years and read by chosen ones in corridors they had not expected to find themselves in. Corridors that look nothing like the palace of ancient Persia, but feel exactly the same from the inside. She did not know the scope of what her one decision would produce. She could not have known. From inside the corridor, from inside the fear and the uncertainty and the weight of what the crossing was going to cost her, the scope was invisible. All she could see was the threshold. All she could do was decide. And the decision changed everything. Not just for her. Not just for the immediate circle of her life and her people. The decision sent a ripple through time that is still moving. You are reading about her decision thousands of years after she made it, and it is speaking directly into the decision you are being asked to make today. That is not a small ripple. That is the kind of movement that only happens when a chosen one makes the decision that heaven has been positioning them toward through. Every season of preparation, every year of formation, every corridor that felt like it would never end. Your decision will also send a ripple. You cannot see the scope of it from inside this corridor. You cannot calculate from here how far the movement will travel, whose life it will touch, whose corridor it will shorten, whose threshold it will illuminate, because you chose to cross yours. The scope is invisible to you right now, but it is not invisible to heaven. And heaven, which has been patient and precise and relentlessly present through every section of your formation, has already seen where the ripple goes, has already seen the faces of the people who will be reached by the version of you that comes out on the other side of this decision, has already seen the chapters that will be written in your life and in the lives of those connected to you when the chosen one finally stops standing at the threshold and steps through it. This is what makes the decision so much larger than it feels from the inside. From the inside, it feels personal. It feels like a private reckoning between you and the thing that heaven has been asking you to release, to receive, to surrender, to step toward. And it is personal. It is the most personal thing that exists, the intersection of your will and heaven's invitation. But it is never only personal. The chosen ones are never only themselves. They are always also the ones they are assigned to. And every moment spent in the corridor past the point of readiness is a moment borrowed from the people who are waiting on the other side. This is not guilt. Do not receive it as guilt. Receive it as the full picture. Because the full picture is not designed to crush you with the weight of what is at stake. It is designed to lift you past the weight of the fear that has been making the threshold seem larger than the calling. When you see that the calling is not just about your life, when you understand that the ripple of your one decision extends to people whose names you do not yet know, the fear does not disappear, but it changes shape. It becomes smaller than the purpose. And when the fear is smaller than the purpose, the crossing becomes possible in a way that it was not when the fear was the largest thing in the room. Esther crossed because the purpose became larger than the fear. The moment Mordecai named what was at stake, the moment she understood that her silence was not a private choice but a choice, with consequences that extended to every one of her people, the calculation changed. The fear did not leave her. She still said, "If I perish, I perish," which is the language of someone who has not received a guarantee of survival. But the fear was no longer the deciding factor. The purpose had grown to fill more space than the fear, and in that new proportion, the threshold became crossable. Let the purpose fill more space in you than the fear right now. Let the names of the people you do not yet know, the ones whose corridors will be shortened by your crossing, take up real estate in your imagination. Let the ripple be visible to you for a moment, not in its full scope, because that would overwhelm, but in its nearest expression. The person closest to you who needs the version of you that exists on the other side of this decision. The relationship that is waiting for the clarity that comes when the resistance is released. The assignment that has been paused because the one assigned to it has been standing at the threshold, gathering courage that was already present and simply needed to be trusted. Trust it now. The courage is already in you. It was formed in the corridor. It was grown in the silence. It was deepened by every season of pressure that you survived when the survivable amount felt like less than what was being asked of you. You did not survive those seasons by accident. You survived them because something in you was stronger than everything that came against you, and that something is not gone. It did not expire in the waiting. It did not diminish in the silence. It went deeper, and deeper courage is not louder. Courage, it is quieter, more settled, less dependent on the feeling of bravery and more rooted in the simple, unshakable knowledge that the one who called you to the threshold is the same one who will meet you on the other side of it. And here is what the crossing actually looks like. Because the chosen ones sometimes wait for a crossing that matches the drama of what the preparation felt like, and the actual crossing often arrives without fanfare. Esther walked into a throne room. She did not fly. She did not arrive in a chariot of fire. She walked, one foot in front of the other, carrying all of her fear and all of her formation and all of those 3 days of fasting. And she walked. The magnificence was not in the manner of the crossing. The magnificence was in the decision to cross. And the decision to cross is available to you right now in the most ordinary possible way, through the most unglamorous possible first step. You know what the first step is. It has been present in you throughout this entire message, clarifying as each section added its layer to the word. It is not complicated. It is not requiring you to have more than you currently have. It is simply requiring you to use what the formation has produced, to take the depth that was grown in the silence, and the courage that was built in the pressure, and the clarity that has been emerging through every section of this word, and to point it in the direction of the one thing that heaven has been waiting for you to move toward. The book of Joshua carries the word for this exact moment, the word that was spoken to a leader standing at his own threshold, about to cross into territory that the previous generation had never been able to enter, carrying the weight of an entire people's future in the decision he was about to make. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Joshua chapter 1 verse 9. Wherever you go. Not wherever you go as long as the path is clear. Not wherever you go as long as the outcome is guaranteed. Not wherever you go as long as the crossing feels comfortable and the fear is manageable and the timing is universally agreed upon by every voice in your life. Wherever you go, into the uncertain, into the uncomfortable, into the territory that the previous version of you was not equipped to enter, but the formed version of you, the corridor version, the one who has been prepared in the silence and shaped in the pressure, and brought to this threshold by a preparation that nothing in this world orchestrated alone. That version is equipped. That version is ready. That version has everything the crossing requires. The previous generation stood at their threshold and could not cross. Not because they were unloved, not because they were unchosen, but because the fear remained larger than the purpose for long enough that the moment passed. Do not let that be your story. You have been in this corridor long enough. You have been prepared thoroughly enough. You have received enough word, enough silence, enough formation, enough of this message to know that what is on the other side of the threshold is real and is worth every cost that the crossing is asking you to pay. One decision. That is all that stands between the you that has been in this corridor and the you that heaven has been building toward from before you were born. One decision that sends a ripple through time the way Esther's did. One decision that the chosen ones who come after you will one day read about in the story of your life and find the courage to make their own crossing. Make it. The threshold is real. The crossing is possible. The one who has been with you through every section of this corridor is already standing on the other side, not waiting with impatience, but waiting with the kind of certainty that only belongs to the one who can see the full scope of what this decision is about to release into your lives of everyone. Your life was always meant to touch. You are one decision away, and the decision is now. You made it. Not by accident, not by discipline alone, not simply because you had the time or the inclination to sit with a long message from beginning to end. You made it because something in you recognized from the very first sentence that this word was sent for you, that it carried your name in a frequency that no algorithm designed and no human fully orchestrated, that the arrival of this message in your life at this particular moment, in this particular season, with this particular weight still on your shoulders, and this particular door still standing in front of you, was not the product of chance. And having traveled through every section, having received every layer of what was prepared for you here, you are not the same person who pressed play at the beginning. Something has shifted. Something has been moved. Something that was closed has opened. And something that was open but being held back has been released into the current of what heaven has been building toward in your life. This is the moment to be still, not the stillness of the corridor, which was the stillness of waiting. This is the stillness of arrival, the stillness of someone who has received a word and knows it, who has been found by something larger than themselves, and is taking a moment to let the finding be real before the next movement begins. You have earned this stillness, not through perfection, not through flawless faith, not through a journey without stumbling or a corridor without moments of wanting to turn back. You earned it by staying, by choosing, section after section, to remain in the presence of a word that was asking more of you than comfort. That is not a small thing. That is the courage of the chosen, expressed in its quietest and most powerful form. And now, before this message releases you back into the world that is waiting for the version of you that was formed in this corridor, there is one more thing that needs to happen. There is a prayer that belongs to this moment. Not a performed prayer, not a recited formula, a real one. The kind that rises up from the place in you that has been softened and by everything this message has carried. And it goes like this. Father, I come to you not with the version of myself that has it together. I come with the version that has been in the corridor, the one that has been tired and uncertain, and sometimes afraid that the silence meant you had moved on. I come with the weight still on my shoulders and the questions still in my chest, and the door still standing in front of me that I have been gathering courage to walk through. And I am asking you, not for the removal of the weight, but for the strength to carry it across the threshold, not for the elimination of the fear, but for a purpose that is larger than the fear, not for a guarantee of the outcome, but for the faith to move without one. You have prepared me for this moment in ways I am only beginning to understand. You have been present in the silence, in ways I was not always able to feel, but am choosing now to believe. And I am saying yes to the correction, to the crossing, to the version of my life that exists on the other side of the decision I have been standing in front of. I am saying yes, and I am trusting that yes, spoken honestly from this place, is enough for you to work with. Amen. Let that land. Let it settle into the deepest part of you and stay there. Because that prayer, spoken in honesty and in the full acknowledgement of everything you are carrying, is the kind that heaven moves toward rather than away from. It is the prayer of someone who is done performing and has chosen instead to be present. And presence is always enough. Now hear the declaration that closes this message. Because the chosen ones do not leave a word like this without carrying something specific back into the world with them. Something that can be spoken over the days ahead when the corridor tries to reassert itself. When the fear tries to reclaim the ground that this message has taken back. When the enemy tries to reframe everything you received here as emotion that will fade and feeling that will pass and word that had no lasting substance. You were chosen. You were chosen before the foundation of the world, before your first breath, before the first season of pressure that tried to convince you that you were ordinary. You carry a frequency that the darkness has been trying to suppress, because it knows what happens when a chosen one operates at full capacity, at the gamma frequency of their calling, with the root system that the silence grew, and the courage that the corridor formed, and the clarity that the word has been building toward from the very beginning of the message. You are not ordinary. You were never ordinary. And the days that are ahead of you are not a continuation of the corridor. They are the territory on the other side of the crossing that you just decided to make. What you are about to walk into has been prepared. The rooms have been arranged. The alignments have been set in motion. The people who are part of your assignment have been positioned. The circumstances that looked like obstacles are being rearranged into a pathway that could only have been built from the exact material of everything you have been through. Heaven has been working while you were waiting. Heaven has been building while you were in the silence. Heaven has been preparing the other side of the threshold with the same precision and the same patience and the same relentless love that has been present in every section of this message. And it is ready for you in a way that exceeds everything you have been able to imagine for yourself in your most hopeful moments. Your best days are not behind you. They are not even primarily ahead of you in some distant future that requires years more of waiting to arrive. They are arriving now. They began arriving the moment you decided, somewhere in the reading of this word, to stop negotiating with the correction and start receiving it. To stop performing the faith and start practicing it. To stop standing at the threshold, waiting to feel ready, and start crossing because you are decided. The arrival has already begun, and the version of your life that is coming is more magnificent than the corridor allowed you to see. Stay connected to this space, not because this channel needs your presence, but because you need the continued flow of the word that has been prepared for the chosen ones who gather here. There are more messages, more sections of the larger story that heaven is telling through this voice into the lives of the ones who were always meant to hear it. Subscribe if you have not already done so, and let each new message find you the way this one found you, not by accident, not by algorithm alone, but by the hand of something that knows your name and knows your season and knows exactly what word you need at exactly the moment you need it. And if this message has been a lifeline, if it has reached into a place in you that nothing else has been able to reach in this season, if it has given you language for the weight you have been carrying and courage for the crossing you have been standing in front of, then there are 3 simple things you can do right now that cost you nothing but mean everything to the ones who are still in their corridors waiting for this word to find them. First, like this video, not for the algorithm, but as your personal declaration that the word found you today and that you are not leaving unchanged. Second, subscribe to this channel if you have not already done so. Hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so that every new message that is prepared for the chosen ones finds you at the moment it was meant to find you. Not days later, not after the season has passed, but right on time. The way this one arrived, right on time for you. Third, share this message right now with the one person who came to your mind somewhere in the reading of this word. The one whose silence has been telling you they are carrying something they have not named out loud. You do not need to explain it. Simply send it and trust that what brought you here will bring them to what was always meant for them. And if this word has been a source of strength, a companion in the corridor, a voice that has spoken into seasons where other voices could not reach, then consider sowing a financial seed into the ground where this harvest grows. The donate link is in the description below and in the pinned comment. Every seed sown here goes directly into preparing the next message for the next chosen one who is standing at their own threshold, needing exactly what you needed today. Not an obligation, not a transaction, a seed, planted in faith by someone who received something real and wants to be part of carrying it further. You are unstoppable, you are unshakable, you are chosen for this exact moment in history, with this exact story, carrying this exact weight, standing at this exact threshold. And heaven is not watching to see if you are impressive enough to cross. Heaven is cheering for the crossing itself, for the yes, for the decided soul who stopped waiting to feel ready and started moving as if the door was already open. Because for you, it is. It has been open this entire time, and everything that is on the other side of it has been waiting with a patience that only heaven can sustain for the moment that you are living right now. Go cross, the territory is yours. And to every chosen one who made it to these final words, thank you for staying. Thank you for receiving. And welcome to the other side of the corridor. This was always where you were headed.